I screamed. I screamed and screamed and screamed. I said, no, why? What's happened? How can you die?
We resumed the next term. This was my class. I used to have about 21 students. I will enter my class. I discovered I had only 14. The empty seat.
They were by the side of the airport and they saw the plane on fire. But for me, it seems as if it's a movie.
20 years ago, the pain is still raw. On this day, December 10th, 2005, the Sosoliso Airlines Flight 1145 stole 60 bright students of Loyola Jesuit College. Children filled with promises, dreams, and Christmas excitement. Their classmates, teachers, and parents remember not just a tragedy, but a wound that never fully healed. Among them, Madame Ona, still shaken as she recalls the laughter of Nkem Ilabo and her siblings Chukwuka Ilabo and Busoma Ilabo, one family's entire future erased in seconds, leaving their parents entirely childless.
Some of us could not teach until school organized counselors that came to counsel us. I remember Abba Kenechiku. He was very close to me because we came from the same area. Other children, the robbers. Chuka was in my class that time. The pain was even when I was asked to come and do this. I didn't know how to say no because this will open the wound. May God help us. May we not see such a thing again in this place, even in Nigeria.
After 20 years, I still miss Zikora Okafo, Chidimo Okafo, Baduri, Chinenye, Busoma Ilabo, Chuks Ilabo, Sandra, Gabriela, Busoma, and so many other. But I feel that they're still around with us. I still feel their presence in us, though that we cannot see them, but I think they are still seeing them. But we miss them. I miss them personally. I miss them a lot, especially that day that was in my house. That was so funny.
I really miss Chidima Okafo. I miss Ibra, Ashley, and the other 58 students. I really miss them so much.
Among the 60 were Chidera Naji of JS1A, Helen Egwele of SS2A, born in 1990, Augustus Idabo of SS1D, born in 1991, Emmanuel Ntemuse, Mark Kamanu, Emmanuel Lolo were all lost in the flames. Bariza Adebolu of SS2A, born in 1991, Ini Utak of SS2B, Marita Chibo of SS3C, born May 2nd, 1989, Oyindamola Amakri of JS3B, Kenechukwu Abba of JSS1, Daniel Akma, born in 1990, alongside 45 others, were part of a generation of promising young minds whose lives ended abruptly on that runway in Port Harcourt. At just 16, Kechi Okuchi, now 36, survived against all odds, receiving third-degree burns with her body almost unrecognizable and given barely a 30% chance of survival. She rose from tragedy to become a global symbol of resilience.
The pilot made the announcement that we would start our descent soon into the Port Harcourt airport. And again, everything was fine. Even when the turbulence started, there was no indication that anything was going to go wrong. It was just turbulence, and everyone's used to turbulence, everyone that flies. So we didn't think much of it. But as it continued, there was building tension in the plane. You know, people started feeling kind of like, what's going on? But no one said anything, you know, because no one wants to jinx it and actually say something if nothing is happening. So As it got worse and worse, it was a woman at the back of the plane that kind of screamed. She was like, "Is this plane trying to land?" And when she screamed, that was when chaos ensued. Everyone started screaming, "Blood of Jesus! Oh my God!" Like it was just, and we were all still strapped in, but everyone was screaming now and praying out loud and crying. And I remember just sitting there, like just shell shocked, confused, wondering what the heck is going on, and just not being able to reconcile that this was reality. I remember just kind of feeling this out of body feeling like this can't be happening. This is not real. This is like a movie. This is like a movie. And my last memory is holding onto my friend's hand. She was in the aisle seat next to mine. And right after that, it's just darkness, just darkness. I remember this metal scraping sound like nails on chalkboard. And then it was just darkness. And then 5 weeks after that, I was opening my eyes and I was in the hospital in South Africa, opening my eyes from a 5 week hospital induced coma. I sustained third-degree burns. I came to this country in a wheelchair and could barely walk. And they did surgeries that allowed me to basically take back my life and do things for myself. And very importantly, go back to school. It has been 20 years since the accident. And standing here before you, I can confidently say that despite the tragic events of that day, despite my injuries, despite the difficulties I've faced with these injuries, because of the solid support system that I have had all these years, which include my family, my friends, doctors, physical therapists, teachers, professors, mentors, and especially the parents of the kids who passed away on that day, the 60 angels. I have now been able to accomplish so many things that make me proud of myself, and I hope makes them all proud as well. I'm a speaker, I'm a singer.
In 2005, Loyola Jesuit College, founded in 1996 as a co-ed Jesuit school, had only 618 students. Losing 60, that is 10% in one incident on that dark December day, was a devastation that almost crippled the institution.
I learned that one of the problems they had was the issue of water. When the firefighters came, they didn't have enough water to put up the fire. Can you imagine a state named River State, no water? So it's part of the pain. I felt that it was kind of avoidable if they had done the right thing.
Our own dear children, if you understand Jesuit education, there's a value that we hold dearly, cura personalis, care for each individual student. We know them by name, very dear to us. And we heard there was a plane crash, the way they died, there was no water at the airport, they could have saved lives, and some children were even taken to the hospital, nobody to care for them. Some parents saw a particular child. I called the parent, come and see your child. He's here in the ward. Before the parents came, that child died. And 60 of them. We spent 2 weeks in Port Harcourt, going from home to home, visiting all the parents.
The air flight controller did not tell the pilot that there was about the wind information, speed and direction of the wind. So the pilot experienced wind shear, and that's what threw the plane off balance. He tried to land the plane. Another terrible defect of that Port Harcourt airport was that they had a culvert very close to the runway, a concrete drainage which clipped one of the wings of the plane. So the plane started spinning, smashed, caught fire, and sadly the parents heard the explosion.
Immediately after the plane crash, the then executive president, Olusegun Obasanjo, was one of the first people to visit. He visited with the then Archbishop of Abuja, Cardinal Onaikan. Also, Ken Nnamani, the then Senate president, visited. We had people from across the country who visited, traditional rulers, Muslim clerics, Christian leaders. It felt really consoling, comforting, because we felt supported by the nation. We felt we were not grieving.
And it took them time to even help these children based on this story. I believe if government um, did what they're supposed to do by having people, the health people and those who would have put the fire off on time, this more people would have been saved.
A crash investigation set up by then President Olusegun Obasanjo revealed a deadly mix of deteriorating visibility, wind shear, poor runway lighting, and a breakdown in communication. Factors that caused the aircraft to slam into the ground and explode with 109 souls on board.
Checked the children in to the airport, the chaperone, parents, and some staff helped us with that. And the flight took off at about 12:20, 12:25. And the parents were waiting in Port Harcourt to go from Abuja, Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. But about 1 p.m., I think that's when the plane started descending. And the control tower had cleared the plane to land. But unfortunately, the runway was not lit, and the pilot really did not have visibility of the runway.
That sheer wind. And so as the Sosoliso airplane was approaching the runway, they were already seeing the aircraft. The parents of the children and everybody, they were there at the airport. So you can imagine the plane. The thing came down in their presence. And so as it was approaching the runway, there was a sudden change. There was a sheer wind, a sudden change in the direction of the wind. And the pilot could not control the aircraft, and the aircraft went down. Nigeria has gone beyond that since then. Those beautiful souls were lost, and Nigeria has gone beyond that. We have since bought those equipments. We have equipped our airspace. We are far, far safer than we were at that time. There's still room for improvement. We have one of the safest airspaces in Africa right now. I can assure you that.
I must tell you, I trained that pilot, Captain Adekunle Adebayo. I trained him to become captain. I got that shocking news, and it shocked me because I know he was a good pilot. But that unfortunate incident happened not because of how the aircraft was not serviceable or what. No, it was weather.
Tie into that weather was the fact that they had outdated information. When the crew left Abuja to depart to Port Harcourt, the weather briefing they were given was that there was no rain and the runway was clear. And as they approached, they were told light showers. But on the approach end of the runway, there was a cell that was just moving off the runway, and they encountered wind shear on approach into the airport. Now, wind shear is when there's a sudden change in wind speed or direction. You can increase or reduce your performance. So that was the first thing they had to contend with. They weren't expecting any wind shear. There was no, right now, modern airplanes all have predictive wind shear capabilities. So the airplane can tell you when there's a shift in wind speed. Finally, NIMETs back then did not have Doppler radar to detect wind shear. And as a result of that, of course, they got into a situation they weren't expecting and weren't properly trained for as well.
This is why these days we would rather cancel a flight than risk the lives of our passengers. Because when these accidents occur, there's no amount of words and explanations we have. We lost value in Nigeria when those crashes occur.
Mr. and Mrs. Naji, appearance of Chidera Naji, one of the deceased angels. Like other grieving parents, they say they watched helplessly as their children burned. Firefighters insisting there was no water to fight the flames.
We heard the news of a crash of an aircraft, but they said it was a chopper. And we knew our children weren't flying on chopper, so somehow we didn't take it to note. But after some time, we found out that there were some people who were loaded in pickup, and we saw that they were wearing uniform of Jesuit, Loyola Jesuit. And it was then that everybody knew that something happened, that that chopper news was fake. It wasn't true. It was at that time that we now headed to that gate, pushed it open, and everybody ran into that field. We knew that we couldn't do anything. We don't have any equipment. But the fire brigade that entered earlier, the team that went in earlier had issues, saying they had no water and stuff like that, no equipment to fight the fire. We were helpless. You know what it means. We saw most of those students wriggling and some still burning. There was nothing we could do.
It's a pain we wouldn't want to wish any parent or anybody. It's a very painful one, and it's still painful.
2 decades later, some schoolmates still blame poor infrastructure and slow emergency response for the magnitude of the tragedy.
One thing that Nigerians love to espouse is aphorisms and cliches about different things, such as he who fails to plan, plans to fail. So you would expect that we would carry that same mindset into things such as airports and aircraft emergencies. But at that very moment in time, it was glaring that we were ill prepared. We definitely did not plan. And so when things hit the fan, the failure was catastrophic. It was one of those things where the consequences of that poor attitude towards safety, it just showed glaringly for everyone to see. There was no second chance, no opportunity for a do-over or just to learn the lesson. It came as hard and as strong and as clear as day as you would expect. And the question is, though we can't change the past, can we learn from it?
Government agencies now say the crash triggered significant improvement in Nigeria's aviation safety framework.
It was a decade of accidents in Nigeria, a real decade of starting from 1996 when the ADC happened, the first ADC crash happened, and then on and on, from then to the Bellevue crash to the Sosoliso crash. After then, Nigeria got a bit more careful and serious about equipping, the aviation industry. Was that the technical equipments by which we could avert what happened to the Sosoliso crash were then purchased by Nigeria.
We have upped the game with that. We had a lot of our firefighting equipment that were dated. We've started a major refurbishment of those firefighting equipment across all of our airports. So maintenance contracts with OEMs to make sure that those equipment are working.
So right now we are in this phase where even for as little as one bolt, one screw missing, we'll cancel that flight. Except we are totally sure of the safety of that aircraft, the flight will not operate. Passengers may get offended, they may get angry, but we would rather save their lives than have to apologize to their grieving families later on or explain to the world why we are losing valuable citizens in Nigeria.
For Loyola Jesuit College, recovery was a miracle. The school reopened in January 2006, just weeks after the disaster, and has since rebuilt its community around remembrance and hope. The 60 Angels Memorial Complex domiciled within the school premises, a 60-flat teacher housing built in their honor, and Jesuit Memorial College, Hope Reborn, located along 60 Angels Memorial Road, Umbodo Alu in Port Harcourt, River State, stand today as enduring tributes.
The Society of Jesus, in collaboration with the government of River State, a school, Jesuit Memorial College, Port Harcourt, was set up. This came to life because during the tragedy, after the tragedy, the governor then, His Excellency Governor Peter Odili, wanted to build parks or to buy planes in memory of the children, the parents, the grieving parents, opted for a school. They had decided to build a school in memory of their children, and they told the governor that that was their preference. They wouldn't have been traveling some 500 kilometers from Port Harcourt to a school in Abuja if they had easy and near access of a good school to them there in Port Harcourt. So that ultimately collaboration between the River State government and the Society of Jesus Jesuit Memorial College was founded.
Loyola is one of the best schools in the country and in the world. To lose 60 brilliant minds is a big loss to the nation. So we also ask the nation to take heart, and we try our best as adults to ensure that such will never happen again. We know that Jesuits will never forget. Will never forget our children. And we're also asking that you pray for us and you continue to support us.
For current students, the 60 angels are not just names. They are a reminder to live with purpose, compassion, and conscience.
Coming to this place, even the scenery itself, when you come from the 60 angel side, you are greeted with the mosaic of the 60 angels. When you get into deeper, you have the pictures of each angel individually. And sometimes just makes you think that what could have happened if things went better. Because as we know, the conditions of the crash were not due to natural sources. They were due to technical issues. So it makes you think sometimes, because there's nothing that makes us better than them. And it really gives a humbling feeling to being a human being, to know that nothing is permanent in this life.
So the Sosoliso plane crash was a national tragedy. So I had already heard about it before I came to the school. At the time, which was around 2019, when my mom she really admired Loyola Jesuit College, and she wanted my brother and I to go. And she would tell us about how they built themselves up from such a horrible event that a lesser school would have been brought to their knees. But even they would have closed for the whole year, not talk of resuming the next term. And when I eventually came to the school, I was asked like whether or not I felt scared. But I will admit that when I first came, you wouldn't, I wouldn't say that you wouldn't believe that something like that happened. But like, I would say that in all my years here, I've spent 5 years here. This is the first year, because it's the 20th year anniversary. This is the first year that it's actually dawning on me the magnitude of what happened. I always knew what happened, and we'll commemorate it with the Loyola Union events, where we make a drama, and then every 10th of December we have a memorial mass remembering them. But to actually sit down and think about what happened, this is the first time that I'm actually doing it. Because when something like this happens, everything stands still, and you don't know how you can possibly keep living. Like when I think about it, whether if it was me or if I was a parent. So whenever I think about it, I have a lot of respect for the school.
To the parents of the 60 angels, I just want to ask if it's possible that they are not overwhelmed. Because 20 years is a lot. Think about where your 36-year-old child would have been, or if you could have been a grandparent, having grandchildren, people visiting you, what they could have done, where they could have been. So just to try not to be too burdened by the worry or to be overcome by the possibilities of what they could have been, the choices they could have made.
As Nigeria remembers all 109 lives lost, including televangelist Pastor Bimbo Dukoya, Loyola Jesuit College stands transformed, more resilient, more safety conscious, and deeply committed to forming men and women for others, rooted in the St. Ignatius Loyola spirit, always striving for the greater good.